what we're talking about today is how to make an impact in our roles as administrative professionals. I want to thank all of you from India, Asia Pac, being here today, listening to the segment that I'm sharing. And I want to thank all of you out there in the virtual world who've taken a peek into my class today on how to be strategic. We want to make an impact in the roles that we play. An impact results in either positive outcomes or negative outcomes. And as I shared with you earlier this morning, it's a ripple effect. It can affect people both in the company and people outside the company that we don't even know. And this next segment is how to make an impact by being strategic. And the first thing that I know that we do in our world, almost all of us do, some of us love it, some of us hate it, and that is calendaring. Calendaring is my life. Would you agree? You spend 99% of your day calendaring. But if we look at calendaring as an important aspect of our roles, which it is you're managing time, incredible amounts of time. There's never enough time, is there? We need to think of it as strategic. We need to think of calendaring itself as very strategic to the jobs that we do, because you can have an impact, both negative and positive, depending on how you calendar. Here's the big question. How do you know it should go on the calendar? Who gets to see your boss and who doesn't? Does your boss make all the decisions, or do you make the decisions? How do you know? How much time is it going to take? What's it all about? These are key elements to being strategic when we're dealing with partners, our business partners, being a business partner, and understanding the calendar. So I guess the question I have is, how do we go from tactical to what I call strategic? What questions do you ask? What questions do you ask when somebody wants to get on the calendar? What's the agenda? Objective. Time. How much time do they need? Duration. Well, that's time. What else? Huh? How urgent? Yeah, what's the priority? Okay. Time zone. Who are the participants? Okay. Who are the participants? Technology. What technology do we need to use? Absolutely. Now, what questions, when someone wants to get on your calendar, do you ask your boss? Oh, that's a good one. Did you promise it? And most of the time they said yes, get them on my calendar, and you're going, oh my God, I don't want to put these people on my calendar. How do you do that? What other questions do you ask your boss? Well, yeah, you know what is your priority? Because I will tell you, most people who want to get on your boss's calendar, it's their top priority. But is it your manager's priority? Do you want to do this at all? Or do you want someone else in the room? I will tell you a story in a few minutes here. Do you want anyone else in there with you? How many times have I put a meeting on the schedule for my boss, and he said, is so-and-so going to join me? Didn't know that so-and-so was supposed to join you. Now I'm running down the hall trying to find so-and-so to join him in that meeting because I didn't do what? I didn't ask the question. What other questions do you think you would ask?
What time to be prepared to do it?
Oh, that's right. In a global world, 24/7, You might have him doing it at 5 a.m. I actually have one right now that the Russian team wants John to do at 3 a.m. East Coast time because he's on the East Coast. I said, 3 a.m.? I think I'm going to have to ask my boss whether he wants to be up that early. He might just not go to bed, right? Yeah. Oh, my goodness. It's crazy, crazy, crazy. Right. Right. How much time do you want with that person who thinks they need an hour? Right. Or, in my case, my boss will say, 30 minutes, that's all I need. And what happens? We're to an hour. And I'm thinking, what happened to the 30 minutes? I thought you only needed 30 minutes. Now, guess what happens? I have to ask the question after the meeting to say, you know, what happened? Did I not judge the timing on that right? Or is there something I did wrong here? So this is where we're going today in terms of going from tactical to strategic. As administrative professionals, we're just in reactive mode all the time. I need this meeting and this meeting and that meeting, and we schedule this one and do that one, and we're just like getting it on the calendar as quick as we can. But if you want to become strategic, you've got to take a step back and say, why am I putting this on the calendar in the first place? How many administrators have I talked to over the years that are just putting it on the calendar because he asked me to? It's completely okay to say, is this a priority? Thank you for telling me to put this on the calendar. Can you give me more information? I hate it. I hate it when someone calls me and asks, especially at a CEO level, an executive assistant who will call me and say, my boss wants to get on the phone with your boss. I inevitably say, do you know what the topic is? No, he didn't tell me. That tells me sometimes that that executive assistant isn't truly a business partner, because I would never call and ask to get on a CEO's calendar without having just a snippet of the topic to share with that EA who's going to ask me 9 times out of 10. If we don't start taking our level of play up to a more strategic level, we will strictly be administrators. Do we want to be business partners? Absolutely. Do we want to understand what we're putting on the calendar? We should understand what's going on the calendar. Now, I will tell you a story. About a year ago, teaching STAR, one of my students, we were talking about this, and my student was frustrated. She goes, you know, it's driving me crazy. My boss is making me nuts. She's changing her calendar all the time. I just get meetings scheduled, and she changes them. It's making me nuts. And I asked her the question, understanding the ARC triangle, what do you think's going on? Well, I don't know, because I just can't keep up with her. My suggestion was, well, I think you need to go back and start asking some questions. Okay, I've never done that before. Some administrators are actually somewhat nervous about asking questions. You don't get to be strategic if you don't ask the question. So she went back. First of all, her boss was like surprised. What, you want to know why I'm doing this? I took Debbie's class, and yes, I do. The next class, which was 4 weeks later, she had her hand raised. I had to share something. So I said, tell me what happened. She goes, well, I went back, and I asked that question. My boss, first of all, was surprised, but then she began to explain that this meeting has to occur first. We have to come to an agreement before this meeting occurs. And once this meeting occurs, then we have to schedule another one that's 3 to 4 weeks out from there. Suddenly, it clicked as to why she was rescheduling, because this poor administrator was just putting all the meetings on the calendar. She didn't think about the strategies that go into each meeting that goes on the calendar, and we've got some very complicated calendars at Cisco. Very complicated. But as a result of asking the questions, now she actually said to me, I feel like I'm part of it now. I feel like I've got a business partnership now. And I feel like I can ask those questions now and not feel like she's going to look her nose down at me. She was actually appreciative that I wanted to understand her priorities. We have to understand our priorities. All these questions are good questions, but I'll tell you, when you don't ask questions, you get into trouble. I have several stories. I have so many stories of how I did not ask the question. But I know how many of you have very difficult calendars to orchestrate. You need 6 or 7 or 10 executives, and it's hard to get them all in the same room. And my boss said, I want you to make this meeting happen. And I want these executives in the room. Beautiful. Okay, I get on a conference call. I get all these executives, assistants talking to me, and we finally find a date. Oh, my gosh, it was 4 weeks out, perfect timing, 2 hours. That's a lot of time. A week before the meeting, one of the executives is in a meeting with John and says, I'm not ready. I'm not ready for this meeting. And John comes out and says, Debbie, I want you to cancel it. We're going to reschedule it. Okay, I mean, that's when your blood pressure goes up. That's when you want to say, okay. Ah, really? Well, you know what the problem was? When he asked me to schedule that meeting, did I ask him the questions? No, I was so worried about just getting the dang thing on the calendar and for 2 hours and all these executives. Did I have an agenda? Did I get an agenda from him that I could have sent out to these other executives? I didn't do that. So who paid for that? We did not have that meeting. It was not productive because I shot myself in the foot by not asking the questions I needed to ask so that I could have been more strategic. We wouldn't have wasted time. And let me tell you, those EAs were happy to get the 2 hours back, but they're like, I've held those 2 hours for a long time. I could have used them. It happened to me also when John wanted to go up to Seattle. He wanted to have a meeting with Steve Ballmer, their executive team, our executive team. I got on the phone with his assistant. We started looking at the calendar. Very tough to get 2 very high-profile CEOs together in the first place, and then everybody lining themselves up. We found a perfect date where John could get on his plane with his executives and fly up there. So John wanted a pre-briefing meeting with the team before going up there to get the ducks in a row. They're in there for like not only maybe 15 minutes, and he comes out and he says, how much time did you allocate for me to be up at Microsoft? Well, what, an hour, 2 hours? Deb, this is supposed to be a full day. And Steve Ballmer's not available for the day. Ah, another heart attack. I didn't ask the questions that I needed to ask. All that time that I spent just finding a date proved to be fruitless because I didn't ask the questions. If we want to be strategic, we have to ask the questions. We have to understand why it's going on the calendar in the first place. If we just put it on there because they tell us to, then we're nothing more than mechanical. Yes?
So I'd say that another question I've got quite used to asking is what prep time do you need? Because that's also when we all have calls with our teams, when you've got to try and sync up with execs, it's better than an email trail, which is just like what makes you lose the will to live sometimes, is to ask the admins on the call as well to make sure that their guys have got adequate prep time. So I guess that's another good question.
It's a great question to ask, especially for strategic meetings and tactical meetings where your boss is suddenly going to hit you up and say, hey, I need at least 2 hours of prep time before that meeting, and you're already got him booked back to back to back. And I do fall into that sometimes where I forget that they need that prep time. That is becoming strategic. You've got a big presentation coming up. We talked about this yesterday. How much time do you think you're going to need to get ready for that? Oh, I'm going to need at least 4 hours. I'm going to figure that out. I'm going to have to take some things, rearrange things, rearranging things, taking things off the calendar. There you have to also be strategic. Who gets to go and who stays on the line, right? And that becomes, you become everybody's mad at you. But I waited all this time to get on his calendar. That's where you're acknowledging and you're understanding and all that comes into play. But we are really pushing for business partnership today. I hope that someday when you apply for a role, you are applying for a role as a business partner and not an administrative professional. But a business partner understands the business. And to understand the business, you have to ask the questions. If you don't ask the questions, then you're truly just what I call tactical. Now, briefing the boss. This is another part of the partnership and the strategic piece that I want to talk about. Because with John, in John's world, we have to brief him on just about every meeting he has. I often joke about how we have to brief him when he's going to the men's room so that he knows how many people are going to be in there at the time that he's going to be in there. But long story short is I have a team of people who help get John prepared for his meetings. But one day I got a call. And it was the New York team who wanted John to come to New York and meet with the mayor. At that time it was Bloomberg, I think. And they sent me a briefing because we ask for briefings all the time. Now, because I'm a strategic person, I read the briefings. Do you read your briefings when people send them in, or do you just put them into the folder? Do you highlight the briefings? Do you look at it and say, ooh, that's interesting? So I was reading this briefing, and I noticed that in that conversation he was going to have with the mayor, there were going to be like 3 specific city initiatives. There was the Lighthouse Initiative, there was the Oak Tree Initiative, and one other one I can't even remember. So I'm reading the briefing, I'm reading about the initiatives. I went, I don't see anything about these initiatives. So I pick up the phone. This is being strategic. I call the account manager and I say, you've got all these initiatives here that John is going to have a conversation with the mayor on. What are they about? He knows. He already knows. We've had this conversation before. How many of you have gotten that? He already knows. In this conversation, it should be okay. I said, it's not okay. It's not okay for me. Because if I don't understand it, you expect him to understand it out of the 3,000 plus customers that he visits on a yearly, monthly, weekly basis. I think you need to put in some feedback on each of these initiatives. I'm not asking you to write a novel, but you need to refresh his memory on what these initiatives are. Oh, they didn't like that, but what they did was they rewrote that briefing, and they sent that briefing to me, and it was beautiful. You know who thanked me for that? John, because he was up to speed. The minute he got into that room, he was up to speed. Now, I got a call last year from a woman who wanted to have a phone conversation with John. Her name is Madeleine Albright, former Secretary Madeleine Albright. She wanted to introduce John to Penny Pritzker, who is probably one of the most wealthy women in the nation. And I decided to take on the briefing role. I thought, okay, you know, I'm going to save my communication manager some time, and I'm going to do the briefing myself. I'm going to take care of it. So I got this briefing all put together. I highlighted it, you know, and it's all about the things that she wanted to talk to John about, because I asked some questions. You know, we're not going to be making use of their services because the price tag is too high. And then I gave her a little bio on her, and I was so excited. I was so excited. But before I gave it to John, I thought, you know what, maybe I should just have one of my communication managers look at it so we can decide that it's good. Here's what happened. This is how I felt after my communications manager takes a look at it. You don't have on there the day of your briefing. You just say the date. Is it Thursday, Friday, Monday? What's the day? Okay. How long is this call going to be? I didn't have it on there, did I? I didn't say it's going to be an hour. I didn't say it was going to be, I didn't say that. Is this her cell, her office? I didn't say that. Is there a home number or a backup number in case we call that number and no one answers? I didn't say that. I'm like, by now, sweating. Is there an alternate phone number? Because this has happened where I've gotten a phone number on a briefing and no answer, or you get a person that's not even supposed to be on the call, and John's saying, is there another number that I can call? I don't know. I didn't think about that. We talk about workforce preparedness in the briefing. I have it in the briefing. Yes, workforce preparedness. Well, do you have any more information on that? What is workforce preparedness anyway? We have no idea. I didn't know. Okay, we talked about a proposal. Do we have anything on that proposal? No. No, we don't. Now I'm like going, why did I even decide to do this in the first place? Well, we said we weren't going to accept this proposal. What was the price tag of the proposal? I didn't have it in the briefing. I didn't even know how much money we were talking about. And why were we not accepting the proposal in the first place? Here's a good one, Penny Pritzker. How is that pronounced? How many times is it a William or a Bill, James or a Jim? And when you get into your world, in Asia, in China, if I don't put the pronunciation of how someone's name is said, like I've had some challenges with yours, how do you think he looks when he says somebody's name and butchers it? So now, even in those briefings or in his travel itineraries, we have to put the pronunciation. Oh, by the way, do they go by His Majesty, His Excellency, Madam? It's Madam. Yes, sir. Some people do not like to be informal. In Asian countries, informality is not necessarily a good thing. So we do have to pay attention in terms of briefing our boss. And this is when we become strategic. This is when we take a briefing, we read the briefing, we ask ourselves questions. Look how many other questions I didn't even ask. Now, I'm not a communications manager. I thanked them profusely and said they would be doing the briefings from now on. I also learned something from those briefings. I learned a lot from doing that briefing. And I now know that if I have to do another briefing, I will just kill myself. But anyway, I will do the briefing and I will get it the best way that I can. But there are a number of ways that we brief John. I'm going to share with you some tidbits on briefings that I think and hope will help you when you get your boss prepared to brief. If he's having a meeting with someone, the date, the time, the location, and what type of meeting is it? Is it a face-to-face? Is it a telepresence? Is it a WebEx? Is it a phone call? What is it? Be clear on that, even in your calendar. In the calendar you give your manager, be clear. Customer's name, title, photo. How many of you put photos in for everyone that your boss meets? A photo, and by the way, if they're on travel and they get to an airport and a team member from your company meets them, how many of you put the photo of that person? Good job. They're out there lost. They're looking for somebody that's a familiar face. Yeah, you don't know how to go crazy on that. But yes, photos of the person. John loves photos. He's a visual person. He walks into a room. If he knows what that person looks like, he'll walk right up to him. Say, hi, I'm John Chambers. How are you? Nice to meet you. By the way.
Sorry, Debbie, I do that in Outlook calendaring as well, because now we have the facility where you can copy and paste it. So the first thing they do when they land is they turn their phone on, right? So if you open the Outlook, they can actually see the photo of the person in there without having to pull all their papers out.
Absolutely.
Bios. Bios are important because when I say, hi, I'm John Chambers, nice to meet you. By the way, your son went to the same college mine did. Whoa! What's happening here? Huge, huge. And when you're doing the briefings, you highlight those things that you know your boss is interested in. If it's universities, sports and hobbies, John's really into sports and hobbies, and if they're basketball players or tennis players or whatever, I always highlight those. Or if they've had any key accomplishments in their life and their career, I highlight those because that allows your principal to be even more effective than they've ever been before. Seating charts. When John goes into a room, he wants to know who's sitting around him, who's sitting on his left, who's sitting on his right, who's sitting in front of him, and what do they look like. This is being strategic. When you are actually making your boss more effective, because I know I'm going to sit next to Molly. Hi, Molly. It's good to see you. Great to see you, Vijaya. Everything, I'm just happy to be here. And now I know a lot more about you because I've also read the bio. Of course, meeting objectives have to be there, definitely have to be there. What are the key messages that your principal, your boss, has to get across to this group? What are they looking to hear from your boss? What are their objectives? These are key elements of briefing your boss. Now, I had my boss went to a government meeting, San Jose, I think it was the city of San Jose, where a number of CEOs were in the room. By the way, if there are a number of CEOs in the room, we have to also tell him who's going to be in the room with him and give him Facebooks on who those people are. We've gone way beyond most people these days. We get nauseous with our data. But he's sitting next to a CEO, and I'll show you this later, but this is a sample of his binder, which we give him every day, that has everything in it. And he's sitting there listening to the mayor, or whoever it was, and looking at his book, putting pictures together, and the CEO next to him leans over and says, "What's that?" "Oh, well, my team puts this together for every meeting I have, and I can tell exactly who's in the room, and I also know what the initiatives are," and he went on and on and on. The CEO goes, "I need that." His executive assistant called me later. "What did you do?" I said, "This is what we always do." She goes, "Okay, well, now I have to do it." So I had to send her a complete set of templates, which I have here, which I'll be happy to send to you, on the types of briefings that we prepare for John. If John is going to meet a skip level, because I know some of your bosses meet skip levels, we have a briefing on that person. We have a bio on them. We know what their successes have been in the company. We know where their weaknesses or areas they need to develop are, so that when John sits down and has that skip level, he can make that a much more productive conversation. If it's a retention issue, which we have a briefing for retention. What are the things that that employee needs to stay? What's their walk-away value? We have so many things that prepares your executive for being really productive and successful. This is being strategic. This is being a full business partner. You're flying cover for your principal. Think of yourself as the wingman. You're making sure that you're getting all the obstacles out of the way, but you're also making sure that your principal is as productive as they can be and as successful as they can be. Now, events. How many of your principals attend or participate in events? A lot of us do. Give them a basic detail of the event. What's a snapshot? What kind of event is it? Is it a charitable organization? Is it a strategic organization? What's the theme? Who are some of the other speakers in the room? Especially if your boss is speaking. Who else is he following, or who is he, coming after him? What's his role? Is it to motivate? We talked about this yesterday in doing presentations. Is he motivating, educating, informing? What's he doing? Is he selling? And how many attendees? Let me tell you, we put together an event for John to go to San Jose State University. They were going to give him an honorary degree. And I, as always, failed to ask certain questions. I thought it was about 500 people. It was over 1,000 people going to this event. And I almost fell off my chair. I had no idea. Now, the account team was a little sneaky because they didn't quite tell me. Because if they had told me in the beginning that there was over 1,000 people, I would have gotten on the phone and said, "John, I got this thing that you may want to attend. However, it's over 1,000 people." By the time John has a name that follows him and people want to join and go to these events, I think that thing just grew and grew and grew and grew when they found out that was John going to get this honorary degree. The agenda had him there till 9 o'clock at night, and I had said I only want him there for the afternoon so he can leave. It's Friday. So there were a lot of things that happened is because I didn't get some of this information. Press. Press is a big one. Is there going to be press in the room? Are they going to be asking questions? Or are they just listening? Are they just taking notes? We have to know that. It has to, and for John, it's really important because they could open their mouths and say something. By the way, press can turn anything into a negative if you want them to. They had to be able to ask those questions, and John knows to be prepared. And if they are, who? Which press is going to be there? Key messages and things he should know, hot buttons, all these things are what we do when we're briefing our bosses. This is strategic. This is truly becoming strategic. Now, the next level of being strategic is optimizing your principal's effectiveness. This is how we do it. And this is important because John lives by this. And that is the strategies we use. First one is obviously briefings and a briefing book. He gets one of these every day. It has his entire day in it, a briefing for everything he's doing, everything you could possibly, and at the back is a week at a glance, month at a glance. So in case he wants to see what he's doing in the next week, he has it. And I think what we also do is voicemail. Every night, one of my team leaves him a voicemail on his next day. You're going to start at 8 o'clock. You're going to start out with a press interview. Please wear dark blue, video, and snapshot, 5 seconds going through his calendar for the day. He loves it because it allows him to prepare for the next day. Email updates. John, you got an email from XYZ company, and they're looking for some feedback from you on XYZ. I give him email updates, but we also, this is key. I've talked a lot about this. Your boss is running at 1,000 miles an hour. He doesn't have time to pay much attention to anything, right? You're just bucking him and getting him in and out of one meeting and another. What I tend to do is give him trending information or data that he needs. For example, in this quarter, you had 20 EBCs, executive briefing customer calls. And out of those 20, 16 of them were international, or 16 of them were US. Out of those 16 customer briefings, 10 were telepresence. And then I give him that snapshot so that he can begin to think about the work that he does, the workload, and the data. For example, I gave him and I try to do this on a quarterly basis. You've spent in this quarter 80% of your time on operations and 20% on sales. Whoa, you should have heard him. He says, I don't want to be spending 80% of my time on operations. I need to spend 60% of my time on sales. Guess what happens? Now I know how to prioritize. Now I know that I've got to start readjusting the calendar so that he can become more sales, less operationally focused. And every time we go through the calendar and we talk about his schedule, I always ask him questions. So for example, every year we sit down with him and we talk about the next year and what his priorities are. And we walk through all the requests that we have because he has so many. And he gives us kind of an idea of what his priorities are going to be. Something happened this year, right in January, after we walked through his calendar, when his priorities shifted. And suddenly he was going to China all the time, not just once, but twice already, and maybe 3 times again. I had to sit down with him. In this meeting I had with him, very rare that I get it, but I did. I said, John, some things have changed. I'm sensing that I'm not going down that path that you're going down. So tell me, have your priorities changed? Well, yes, they have. China's our new future, the vision, the new regime. I need to make sure we build relationships. And suddenly I realized what my priorities were and what I had to do to start shifting things around again in terms of my calendars. But I wouldn't be strategic, I wouldn't be a business partner if I didn't ask the questions, I didn't understand the priorities, and I didn't pay attention to that. And no, it's like, okay, I'm going to have to cancel a couple of these one-on-ones because he doesn't want to spend as much time internally, now he wants to spend more time externally. We want to pay attention to the trends, the data. We want to give them data. Do you think they spend time looking at the data and looking at how many meetings they've had and what's going on in their world? No, they don't. They don't do that. Giving them snapshots. Now I love this one because I, like you, probably have a principal or a leader that books themselves completely out of control. So what I do is I'll look at the calendar for 3 months, a quarter, and I'll say, John, in this quarter, between July and November, you have a total of 8 free schedulable hours. It's worse than that. 8 free schedulable hours. That means I've gone through the calendar, looked at every meeting, looked at every 30-minute window, every 15-minute window to see how much time he really has left. And when I give him that snapshot, guess what happens? As people start asking to get on his calendar, he actually becomes more sensitized to it and says, you know, it's going to be tough for me for the next couple months. If it's not urgent, let's try to book it out in the next 8 to 10 weeks. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, sometimes he doesn't pay attention to me at all. But it's up to me to provide for him the information that he doesn't have. He can't see his calendar from day to day. How's he going to see it out the next month or two? He was on the road in June the entire month except for 2 days. I had to give him that heads up really early in May because he was asking people to get on his calendar in the next 6 to 8 weeks. I go, John, the next 6 to 8 weeks, you're not even in the country. So we need to be paying attention to that. We become strategic when we start looking at that calendar and looking at it from a bigger picture, not just getting it on there, but seeing it from a bigger picture. And again, I'm not going to belittle this, but it's important to ask the questions. Ask, ask, ask. Now, let me throw some things out at you. You're scheduling all day, every day. You're under a lot of pressure to be strategic, to understand the business, to make sure what he wants or she wants is on that calendar. So all of a sudden, your principal calls and cancels a fairly complicated meeting it took you days to negotiate to put together. How do you feel? Yeah. It's like, what? Kind of sad, huh? Yeah, you took my class. How do you feel? Your principal calls in and tells you he forgot his college buddies are in town and he needs you to cancel everything from noon onward. His schedule is booked solid. Doesn't it? Oh, I feel bad. It's like, how am I going to get these people back on the schedule? How are we doing this? How come you couldn't tell me? What's going on here? I'm telling you. These are true, by the way. These are all true. None of them are, I'm making it up. Oh, your principal decides to take an important meeting, and he keeps telling you it'll be just another 20 minutes. You have to cancel several other meetings because 20 minutes goes to 80 minutes. I had one situation years ago. Young in my day as an EA to John, boy, did I learned a lot. This young man comes in to be interviewed by John. John, I introduced him and put him into the office. An hour goes by, which is typical for an interview. John, I go in there, he goes, okay, 5, 10, 15, that's 20 more minutes. Okay. Back up, start looking at the calendar. Now we're an hour, almost to 2 hours. And I've already done this, and you notice when you do this, after a while they're going, yeah, I don't want to see you anymore. So now we're into 2.5 hours. I've already decided this calendar is just destroyed. I'm counseling and calling people and saying, well, I'm not sure when, because I've never seen an interview go that long. You know what I did? I picked up my purse and I left and I went shopping. I bought myself a new pair of shoes. Because I figured that, hello, I couldn't do any more damage. I came back and they were just wrapping up. Now, thank God I'd canceled everything else. And he came out and he says, I know, I'm sorry I took so long. Who's next on my calendar? I said, there's nobody next on your calendar. Nobody. Oh, my goodness. But what I'm really getting to here is that we can't make the calendar personal. We own it. We love it. We think it. We eat it. We breathe it. Everything under the sun. But once we start making that calendar personal, it's really challenging. And what I have had to learn in my career is that it's their calendar. They can do with it whatever they want. Many of you in this room have got that philosophy. If you want to be strategic and they want to blow it out of the water, it's exactly what they can do. But it took me a long time, because even now I'm kind of like, okay, that's what he wants to do. He just sent I've just been reading emails trying to catch up, and he's going back to the East Coast. He's just accepting trips left and right. Going to Indonesia I'm going to Indonesia now. I mean, I'm like, oh my God, I was just gone for 2.5 days and you're going all over the world again. It's your calendar. I look at what we have to cancel, but it's your calendar. So this is the part that I really want you to understand, and that is being strategic means a lot. Being a business partner means a lot. So now we're going to move into the next piece of the communication, and this is communicating with your partner, your business partner. I've talked about being strategic and making an impact there, but let's talk about how we can make an impact by having a better business relationship with our boss. And it's all about communication. It's all about communication. We've been focused a lot on that today. I see this all the time. This resonated with me. Sometimes our own feelings of powerlessness or inferiority may interfere with communicating effectively with your principal. How many times have I heard someone say, I can't ask him that. I don't feel good about that. Oh, he's far more superior than I am. I'm just a humble assistant. And when we have that type of thought process going on, we cannot communicate effectively with our principals, can we? I have worked for John for 23 years, and even I get intimidated by him sometimes in asking him a question. I had an administrator, we were having a meeting back east in Raleigh, and we had a great dinner reception planned, and they had asked me and John's department to pick it up. I flew out there, I taught 2 days, and we're having a nice conversation around the table. The site manager at that time, the VP that was managing that site at that time, was sitting next to me, and I looked at her in the eye and I said, you know, how come your boss doesn't pay for this? Oh, well, he would never do that. He's so frugal, he would never pay for this. Did you ask him? No, I can't ask him to do that. I said, I have flown out here. I have spent 2 days with your team. And you can't ask him to pick up the dinner tonight? So by the time we left, I said, you go ask him. Please, go ask him. She did. You know what he said? Oh, absolutely. I don't know why you didn't ask me before. Because we fear asking for things. I fear sometimes asking John, Sharon, you must have had to ask a lot because you didn't just ask Lynn, you asked every one of their bosses here, sending their administrator out here. And every one of you probably had to say, I want to go. Please let me go. Please let me go. We cannot allow our feelings that we are inferior get in the way of our ability to communicate effectively with our managers. Would you agree? So some of the gaps that I have seen that create the communication gaps, that create the less impact that you can have, is wrong language. We talked a little bit about this yesterday. We need to learn how to speak their language. It's like going to another planet. Now I'm repeating this for our outside audience, but it's like going to another planet. If you don't know how to speak Japanese and you go to Japan and you get off the train and say, hey, where am I going? They're not going to look at you like, who are you? But if I say, sorry, here's my translation dictionary, I need to know where I'm going, they have a better resonating with you. We have to start using their language if we want to have a seat at the table, if we want to be a true business partner. We need to know what words are they using. We have our own world and we have our own language that I don't expect them to know. But if I go visit Planet Executive, I need to know they're using words like revenues and thinking out of box and innovation and collaboration, and what were some of the other ones we had? Linearity, trending. If we start using that language with them, you are going to blow their minds. You know, that project that you gave me that's focused on linearity, I think thinking out of the box, I'd be able to get it towards where you want it to be and reach that goal and objective that you had. Whoa! They're going to say, wow, she's talking my language. So if we don't use the right language, we create communication gaps. Okay, here's one I use. You're going in to talk to your boss, and as most women do, we talk too much. And we want to tell the whole story. We don't want to just get what we want out of the meeting. We want to say, and you know, this weekend, and I also have been working with so-and-so, and they're not coming along with me, and your boss is glazing over. You know, they don't want to hear it. And when we're nervous, we're talking too much. We're really talking too much. So we have to look at that when we go in. We talked about this in STAR. Let's just have a couple of key objectives. Let's not go into every, you know, we're going to go do that with our gal pals. But let's not do that with our boss. Let's say, I need this and this and this from you. And this is what we need to get done. Or we don't talk at all. How many times when you wanted to say something, you did not? I'm just going to sit here. I'm just not going to be happy. I don't understand why he's doing this, but I'm not going to say anything. Hey, everything okay? Fine. Is there anything I could? No, I'm okay. Nope. We women do this well. What we really want is them to ask us the questions, and then we want to say, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to. But not talking doesn't get anywhere in terms of our communication. I've had to learn to do this with John. If I need to say something, if I hold it inside, what happens? I'm not happy. So I do need to once in a while go into his office and say, I just need a minute with you, just one. I need to talk to you about this one situation and get your feedback. If I don't do that, I'm going to just sit there and be miserable. Please, this can go into your personal life as well. If you don't say it, how do they know it? How do men know what we're thinking if we don't tell them? Smoke signals are not working. Again, if I am not telling you, but I'm going, yeah, okay, whatever. Is my smoke signal getting to him? I'm throwing a pen around the room, and I'm stomping around, I'm throwing books, or whatever I'm doing. Oh, yeah, whatever. I'm going to tell you, and this is not to be derogatory to any of the males that may be viewing this outside of this company, or any of the males in general, but men cannot read signals. They cannot read sign language. You just got to hit them over the head and say, here it is, here's how it is, here's how I feel, because they'll just walk by you 1,000 times a day. They will not hear that. I'm going to tell you this funny story. I have a boss that runs at 1,000 miles an hour. I can be gone for 2 weeks on vacation. He'll never know I was gone. Hi, Debbie, how you doing? Doesn't ask me about my vacation, doesn't ask me anything else. I celebrated a birthday last year, and I got more flowers and more balloons than you could ever imagine. My desk looked like a funeral home. My boss walked in and out, past me, whole week. Didn't even ask me what the flowers were for. My smoke signals weren't working. What I should have done is said, hey, it's my birthday. So we have to be thinking about, are we sending smoke signals or not reading? Let's try to get more clear in terms of our communication. Now, if we want to overcome some of these communication gaps, here's a couple of thoughts. We just talked about this one. Learn how to speak your principal's language. Slow down. We talked about this yesterday. If you're under stress and you're in there asking and talking to your boss, take a breath. And he may look at you and go, what's the matter with you? Just taking a breath. Count to 10. 1, 2, 3. I'm ready to have a conversation. I can see I'm rushing into that conversation and I need to slow down, need to have that conversation, I need to be clear. Listening. We talked a lot about this earlier in terms of the fact that we very, very seldom use this tool, and you have to hone that skill of listening, because every one of you needs to. I need to continually work on listening. And 9 times out of 10, we're already thinking ahead to what we're going to have to do when our principal is asking us to work on something. I'm not even thinking anymore about what you're saying. I'm actually thinking about what I'm going to have to do. So am I really listening to him? And my boss not only has an accent, but he talks at 1,000 miles an hour. So if I don't tune in, I am going to miss a key element that I need to know. And I can literally follow him, especially if he's going really fast. I do an exercise in one of my classes where I pretend to be John, and I rattle off 1,000 things that the administrator has to do. And then I ask the room, okay, how many things did you capture? Half of them capture half of it. Only half of it. And when that happens, what do you have to do? Ask questions. If he's going at 90 miles an hour and walking down the hallway, take your pen and your paper and go, okay. Or, now we have iPhones and Samsungs. I got my recording going. I'm going to capture everything you say because I'm going to miss something. John loves basketball, loves it, loves it, loves it. Every year he goes to the Final Four U.S. basketball tournament. And every year he has certain parameters of when he goes and who he's going to go with. And this year I thought I heard him. And I invited this couple to go with him. And I'm sitting down and I'm sharing with him the itinerary. He goes, that wasn't the couple I was going to invite. Ah! You know how hard these tickets are to get? Oh, I thought I heard you say, I didn't say that. Shoot! Don't worry, Deb. I'll just have to try to get another set of tickets and invite another couple to go, the couple I really wanted to go. But I didn't hear him all the way. I was too busy going ahead and trying to plan the trip and didn't pick up the little tiny nuance of that wasn't the couple he was going to invite. So we really have to focus in on listening to our bosses and then go and work deals. And then if you don't understand them, ask questions. Now, hear what is said. We talked a little bit about this yesterday in STAR, about getting constructive feedback. We have to learn to keep those defensive shields down when we get the constructive feedback. Because I will tell you how many times I have felt like arguing with him. No, that's not the case. We almost got divorced twice in my 23 years because I argued with him. And my defense shields were way, way up. I did not agree with him. But sitting in that room, I didn't practice all the things I've taught you. And I was not acknowledging, and I was arguing, and he and I were not seeing eye to eye. He actually sent HR to talk to me. To me! I thought she was coming in to talk to me about some project we had going. And instead she says, let's talk about you and John. I went, uh-oh. What's going on? And I spewed everything I was all angry about. And then he said, okay, now that you're done, how do you feel? I said, well, at least I told you. I hadn't told him. Well, guess what? He's your boss. This is what he wants. Not what you want, it's what he wants. So you have to make a decision. So I had to sit back and think about what I had done and think about why I had been so defensive and the fact that it wasn't about me, it was about him. And I remember him calling in from international travel. He and I weren't talking. You notice if you're not doing well with your principal that you stop the communication? And I could tell when I picked up the phone, John Chambers' office, it was John. He says, hi, John. Hi, John. It's Debbie. I know that, silly. And I said, John, just before we have any conversation, I just need you to know. And you could just feel the silence cutting through. And I said, I understand. I understand exactly what you needed me to do. And I wasn't following through. You could just see the tensions dissolve. Debbie, I'm so glad that you've come to this conclusion. I can't sleep. You know, we have this good relationship, and I realized that I had put those defensive shields up, and I was not listening. So when your boss has something to tell you, you need to lower those defensive shields to hear what they're having to say. Remember we talked about yesterday, there's always a nugget in that pile of crap, no matter what it is. Methods to communicate. I will tell you that everybody, as we talked yesterday, has a way of communicating. Everybody communicates differently. My boss is a face-to-face and voicemail guy. Don't send him an email. Now, he's gotten to where he likes texting. Texting is something he's become really addicted to. But I am not allowed to text him more than once a day because I could be texting him all the time. So if you're principal is a yellow, red. Remember we talked yesterday about the differences in people's styles, and we talked about the fact, and again, not to belittle the male in the room, but men are different from women in terms of the way they communicate. You know, a man opens the drawer of his closet and checks out his socks, gets his underwear, wearing a brown suit. I'm going to have a red tie. I'm set to go. A woman goes into her closet and says, oh, I like this color, but those shoes will be better, and I'm going to do this, and their closet's a mess. But that's how we think. We cannot expect to communicate with our male bosses if we don't think that way. We have to think the way they think. I need these two things from you. Thank you very much. I'm leaving a voicemail. Many of you don't do that, but I leave a voicemail. I make sure it's strict, succinct, A, B, C. I don't tell him the whole world story. I don't go into information that he doesn't need, doesn't care about. And I only put one action item on my voicemail at a time. One action item on your email at a time. If your boss is like mine, they'll only see the first one, and they don't see all the others because they can only focus on one thing at a time. That's not a bad thing. In fact, us thinking about everything all at once gets us into trouble too. So we want to also think about what types of communication we're giving and how can we communicate more effectively. This is truly what is going to allow you to make an impact and build that strategic partnership that you're hoping and striving for. And I want to thank all of you in the outside world and the virtual world for attending this part of my program today. And any questions that you may have, Officepal will be gathering those up and allowing us to come back to you and answer any questions you may have. So thank you very, very much for being part of us and part of this experience. My first time, loved every minute of it. You guys look beautiful out there. Thank you very, very much.